And thank you, Joe, saving the day, my friend. Joe is vice president at the Massachusetts chapter, so he's saving the day. And he also
there's my bit of value add right there for the month, right there.
He works at Dell, and he's got the best home office ever in the universe. So I'm just saying, I like that. But anyway, so onwards we travel. So tonight's presentation is going to be from Abe, the CEO of ASCM International, and he's going to talk about the top 10 trends in supply chain from ASCM. And Abe, I'm going to allow, and I did allow you to share screen, so you may now share.
All right, let me see if I can get this here.
Yeah, no worries. Perfect.
All right, let me expand that. Can everybody see this deck now?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. First, I appreciate everybody making time today. Getting time out of individuals today is extraordinarily hard. I can probably get money easier out of people today than getting their time. So I really appreciate making your time today. And then also, I know that there are some significant challenges on the East Coast and the West Coast, especially with the fires over there. So if you have any family or friends, our thoughts and prayers are with them, that hopefully everybody is safe and that we can see an end to this catastrophic incident in California and across the United States. So our thoughts and prayers are with those individuals. And again, thank you for having me. I'm going to get to the trends in a little bit, but what I want to first focus on is, the current state of supply chain and, what we're looking at as an organization and what's driving our interest as well as the communities that we serve. As indicated here, we have some good data points for you in terms of where we are as an organization. Just some key numbers for us. One of the key numbers for us is the number of professional members that we have. Over 50,000 individuals today. This is the largest number of individuals that we have since early 2000 in terms of our professional members. Most significant growth has been in the corporate membership, where companies are joining and then getting their employees to sign up. So that's been a significant growth for us, is the corporate side. Obviously, with the merger that we had with Supply Chain Council, it enabled us to represent the company as well as the individual. As you'll see here, as an organization, we've grown significantly. The partners that we've had over the years has changed tremendously. When I joined the organization, we had approximately 250 North American chapters and only 20 international chapters. As we sit here today, it's sort of inverted. We have over, I think, 100 international chapters and 50 some domestic chapters. Not only through consolidation, but a lot of the chapters really lost their way during the pandemic and really struggled to find their footing when they didn't have the face-to-face. So kudos to the chapters here that have found value in maintaining and also representing the supply chain professionals in your local community, a key aspect of what we do as an organization. We started off as a volunteer organization. Volunteers still drive the organization through our membership as well as through the board. We are a volunteer-driven organization. We could not do what we do without the volunteers that we have, not only at a local level, but also within the corporate entity as well. As you'll see here, our revenue has increased to $45 million, just to put some perspective in terms of our growth as an organization. When I joined the organization back in 2006, we were at about $18 million with 100 staff. ISM was also about $18 million at that point, and CSCMP was also, they were around the $10 to $11 million. Last year, we closed at $45 million. ISM is down to about $11 or $12 million, and CSCMP is down to about $2 to $3 million. In terms of our growth as an organization, as you'll see here, we only have 100 employees, same amount of employees that we had back in 2006 when we were at $18 million, and now we're at 45 with 100 employees. Significant kudos to the team as well as the volunteers, because again, we leverage volunteers for the content development as well as job task analysis as well as our content. We could not do what we do without the volunteers for this organization. More importantly, the focus of the company has changed significantly, whereas originally, as the foundation, the certifications are still the core of this company. CPIM, CSCP, CLTD, CTSC, those are still the cornerstones of this organization and really differentiate us in the market space. But I will add that our merger with Supply Chain Council enabled us to represent the corporate entities as well as the individual. And the corporate entities, obviously, on transformation, digital investment, technology, AI, you name it. There's a whole host of opportunities that we have with companies as well as with individuals that we represent in the organizations. Not surprisingly, we have been dealing with a tremendous amount of disruption. I used to ask audiences during this chart, past 4 to 5 years, raise your hand if you've been impacted by one of these events. And then I would say, if you've been impacted by 2, now it's forget about it. Everybody's hand is raised for almost every one of these issues in terms of the impact that supply chain, not only the awareness, but the impact that it's having on people today. Take a look at corporate reports. Almost every corporate report has a reference to their supply chain and the impact that it has not only on their pricing, availability of products, but their ability to meet demand. And I think that's part of the challenge that we have today is the demand signals are so random relative to where they were before in terms of an organization. The disruption that's occurred because of these and the ongoing disruption that we're experiencing from these have created significant challenges for organizations in planning, in execution, in collaboration, in where you manufacture, where you source, where you deliver. Almost every aspect of the supply chain has been impacted by these challenges. And it used to be, again, 5 to 6 years ago, we used to have to explain to people what we did when you said that you worked in supply chain. Now I don't get those quizzical looks anymore. Now I get advice as to how we need to improve supply chain from everybody today. Almost everybody's an expert in supply chain today. Good news is the awareness is there. Bad news, the understanding of the complexity of supply chain isn't at a consumer level yet. I think we still have some work to do to explain how supply chains are a global, activity as opposed to, a manufacturing facility down the street from you that's delivering to you on your products and services. So we still have some work to do. Not surprisingly, the focus for a lot of organizations today is responding to the disruptions, being resilient, being agile, and enabling their organizations to be resilient no matter what. And you can fill in that no matter what based on the previous slide in terms of the disruptions. Not every organization is impacted by those, but almost every organization is impacted by one of those disruptions as an organization. So not only are we challenged in terms of what this means for the organization, but not surprisingly, everybody is asking, what does it look like? Is there a normal anymore? Forget the concept of returning to normal. I think most of the people are starting to ask, what does normal look like in the future? Because of the disruptions that have occurred really do prevent us from going backwards. We did the Economist study in the beginning part of the disruption, and we asked companies, what's your focus? Getting back to where you were or fundamentally changing your strategy, knowing that you're never going back? Not surprisingly, it was split almost 50-50. Half the companies said, just get me back to where I was. I was effective. I was efficient. I knew my demand signals. The other organizations, about 50% of them said, we're never going back. We need to fundamentally change the way that we work. If we were, make to stock, we're now make to order. So there's a tremendous amount of disruption and opportunities that exist in the marketplace. A lot depends on the corporate perspective of those disruptions. Do they view them as showstoppers and that we need to stop and fix this? Or do they see them as leverage points? You know what? We need to take advantage of this because we are more agile or more responsive than our competition. We can take market share away from them. So to address these questions, a lot depends on the organizational perspective on their strategic initiatives for supply chain. So again, getting into the companies in terms of what their normal looks like and what their transformation looks like, then you can start to really understand what it takes to move that organization forward. Not surprisingly, when we're taking a look at the macroeconomic factors, what is impacting us? And not surprisingly, when you ask for your top 10 trends, these are the issues that are affecting us today. Obviously, the global perspective on pricing and on sourcing and on strategic relationships with suppliers has really challenged a lot of organizations today because of the policy side, not necessarily because of the efficiency or the effectiveness, because of policy right now, and a lot of wait and see. We'll get into the discussion on tariffs in a second, but 4 to 5 years ago when we signed the USMCA, These were our partners, Canada and Mexico. And now the rhetoric is that we need to apply a tariff to those partners that we now identify as critical to the future of our security and our defense, that these are our nearshore partners. Again, tremendous amount of disruption in the global marketplace. Supply chain disruption, as we talked about before. And again, you had a little bit of conversation about the workforce in terms of the jobs. We're still at a disadvantage in terms of attracting and retaining supply chain professionals. I think there's quite a bit more interest in the schools of individuals coming in and looking for a job in supply chain. We've got to find ways to recruit and retain more talent. This is still a field that is woefully behind in terms of attracting and retaining qualified talent for their organizations. Not surprising, most of you will recognize this is where we were as an organization before that, in terms of our focus as an industry. We were very effective as an industry prior to the pandemic. If you take a look at it, we had significant, number of options when you purchased. You had reasonable pricing, you had rapid delivery, Amazon with the day, delivering the day of, and, next day deliveries. It rapidly changed, but we were maintaining that. Prior to the pandemic, we had an extraordinarily effective system. The challenge that we had is that we had some latent issues within supply chain that really we were living on a razor's edge. So when you take a look at the key features of the pandemic strategy, the pre-pandemic strategy, by the way, this hasn't changed. This is the strategy everybody wants to get back to. The question is, can you get back to this? And, going back to the previous slide, what does that normal look like? What does the new normal for your organization look like in just in time? Because again, it still is an economic decision for most organizations on what to buy, where to buy, how to, manufacture, where to deliver. Price is still the key determinant for almost every organization. And so I talked a little bit before about the disruptions that we face in our marketplace. And not surprisingly, we identified some key issues that we had within the supply chain that created significant disruption for us. Probably the most significant was the lack of visibility. More often than not, we had tremendous visibility into our tier one, more than likely well-established suppliers who had tremendous resources or higher resources and talent available for their organizations to address the need. More of the disruptions occurred in tier 2, tier 3, where we had lack of visibility and where most of the disruptions occurred. The anecdote, we weren't building jets because we didn't have engines, is because we didn't have washers. That the simplest of products that were preventing the full completion of our manufacturing cycle. So unfortunately, as I indicated before, we were living on a razor's edge, and the pandemic exposed these fundamental gaps that we had, specifically the lack of visibility. Not surprisingly, as with any disruption, we can identify the root causes, and we started to dig into this, and we identified 3 of them. First was the lack of visibility. We did not have clear indication of tier 2, tier 3, and beyond in our infrastructure, as well as our supply chain in terms of availability and timing and our completion in terms of our needs. That was critical. Secondly, the lack of transparency. We did not, nor could we identify what was in our products, where it was manufactured, who touched it, and if we did, more often than not, it was not available to the general consumer, to the general public. Finally, the lack of traceability, and that's the inability to trace the raw materials, the components, to their original source. During the past 4 years, we have spent a tremendous amount of time focusing on visibility. So I doubt there is a supply chain professional today that can walk into the C-suite and say, I don't know who or what is in my supply chain. So that's the good news. We should know everything and everybody in our supply chain. Now the bad news. We now know everything and everybody in our supply chains. And what we're finding out is that we're not as resilient, we're not as sustainable, and we don't have clear sight in terms of our extended supply chain. And now we need to address that, that gap that we have today, because the knowledge that we have right now is that we are not sustainable as a supply chain, as an industry overall. Obviously, there are exceptions to the rule, but more often than not, the lack of visibility did inhibit our ability to respond to the disruptions that we faced. As we worked on the visibility, quite a bit of focus has now been placed on transparency, with an emphasis on sourcing and labor. I saw in the previous topic areas was the focus on labor. There is still a focus on the ethical use of labor, not only the labor arbitrage, but what we're finding is that more often than not, we're seeing forced labor, child labor within our supply chains that we are unaware of. And obviously, this is a responsibility of the prime. You cannot shift that responsibility onto anybody else. So quite a bit of focus right now on transparency, and that is understanding where your data is coming from, the accuracy and the reliability of that information, as well as where those organizations are sourcing from as well. Lastly, the focus on traceability. Obviously, we need to ensure who and what is in our supply chain. Then we need to ensure that we have accurate data and reliable data, received timely. And then finally, we need to address the traceability. And that's our inability to trace the origin to the raw materials. I'm sure you've seen, a variety of different regulatory and policy statements about, identifying source materials. The EU has established the EUDR, and that's requiring the ability to track and trace. I think it's on 11 or 12 products down to the hectare to where it was grown. This is a requirement right now for anything coming into the EU and coming out of the EU where it's going to be transformed. And so clearly we're seeing significant efforts to track and report. I'm not sure how many of you have seen a recent report on Apple having to defend that they do not source out of the DRC for a lot of the critical minerals that they're using in their phones. Again, the traceability part is significant for a lot of organizations because we do not have clear line of sight into our extended supply chain. So a tremendous amount of effort has been spent on the technology and the talent necessary to fill these gaps. So where are we today? What's our organizational strategy in terms of, the move forward? More often than not, it's just in case. And that we're seeing obviously higher inventory levels to prepare for those disruptions. Obviously, planning horizons have shrunk significantly. We're seeing if your planning horizon, more often than not, it's 50% less than it was before. If it was a year, it's probably 6 months because of our inability to, forecast accurately in terms of what kind of system, what kind of economy, what kind of pricing are we looking at. Further, higher storage and inventory costs with the maintaining of the higher inventory levels. Additionally, dependency on suppliers. Again, those strategic relationships that we've developed over the years. Now you need to find ways to not only, buttress those, but you need to find alternatives to them in case of, and again, whether it's tariffs or whether it's geopolitical or whether it's national interest. We hear more often than not, China restricting materials or minerals that they'll ship out that are critical either for, chips or for medical, the medicines with the APIs. There's significant effort being placed on tracking and tracing on the products and services and ensuring that organizations can stay relevant irrespective of, and you can fill in that line based on the disruptions that we first looked at, tremendous amount of effort on ensuring that organizations are resilient and agile. And I think that's, a couple of, comments about the word on resiliency. Resiliency is the ability to stay in business. That does not mean that you're moving forward. You're just resilient. You're able to withstand the shocks to the system. More often than not, that's where the majority of the focus is right now. Where organizations, a number of organizations are going is the agility part. And this is where I talked about a little bit about the Economist study. And that's organizations saying, you know what, we're going to embrace disruption because this is our opportunity to be agile and responsive to the new market demands and the new market dynamics. And so we're seeing quite a bit of focus on that agility part as well as the resiliency. Resiliency, you have to have. Agility is a nice to have, not a need to have for a lot of organizations today. Finally, supplier management, especially strategic supplier management, especially with the talk about tariffs and the various geopolitical as well as regulatory and policy statements out there. A lot of questions about where do you source from, who is your key supplier, and how are you able to maintain those? Quite a bit of focus on that. So let's get into the top 10 trends. These are the top 10 trends. And thank you to our risk committee. I think Deanna was a key member of that committee. So thank you to her and the rest of the team for putting this together. By the way, this is done 100% by our volunteers. We do not pay for this. This is a result of the volunteers getting together and going through a tremendous amount of data to come up with these information. The full report is available on our website. So let's get into, the specific areas. I'm going to not cover all of them. I'm going to cover some of the key ones that we think are critical. Not surprising from the feedback that you're getting, as well as the information that we're seeing, that AI is at the top of everybody's agenda today. And it's in a variety of different formats, from robotics to early warning indicators to predictive analytics. We're seeing AI deployed in a number of ways. More often than not, we tend to see supply chain as an early adopter of technology, whether it's blockchain or AI. Organizations are looking for ways to better enhance their ability to respond to the demand signals that are in the marketplace, and as well as predict what the impact of, whether it's environmental or climate issues have on those demand signals. The need for this and the AI is a focus on the technology. And again, this is one of the areas where we're seeing a tremendous amount of investment. There are very few organizations that are not investing in digital transformation to address the visibility, the transparency, and the traceability gaps that we identified before. Trying to address those with human labor is beyond our capability. Technology is a significant tool to help us, mitigate or reduce those variances and help us be able to better predict what the impact is of disparate data. And so this is where AI becomes a key aspect for us. However, too often we see an over-reliance on technology without an emphasis on the talent side. And a big caution here. Technology in and out of itself is not the solution. A winning combination is getting a trained workforce that understands the data going in as well as the data coming out of the technology, so they can use their experience, they can use their knowledge to better use the data to make better informed decisions or more informed decisions for their organizations. This is one of the areas where we see a little bit of frustration because there's very few organizations that won't invest significant dollars right now in digital transformation. Where are they on their talent side? Are they investing in their talent same level as that they're investing in their technology? And we'd like to see a little bit more, sort of parity in terms of the investment in the workforce side. Secondly, not surprisingly, global trade and geopolitical. I wonder, though, as to whether, at first blush, this may seem like a temporary issue, given the recent elections and the talk about tariffs and nearshoring and reshoring. I think we need to break this out because there is so much layered into global trade dynamics and geopolitical policies. It is clear that there is a significant emphasis, and it doesn't matter which country you're talking about, on national interest and national security. So in certain parts of the world, that discussion would go on food and water. In our part of the world, it is more often not than on semiconductor and EV batteries and medical, supplies, or medical, the medicine itself, vaccines. Each country has a different priority, and the question of how do you balance our need as a country on, ensuring that we have access to semiconductor chips without any, disruption from China or from other nefarious actors. However, it is clear that redesigning the supply chain, the global supply chain, is going to take significantly more time than we originally anticipated. A good example is the chip factory that is being built right now outside of Phoenix in Arizona. TSMC is building the chip factory. Where are we getting the workers from today? They're being imported from Taiwan because we do not have a trained workforce right now that can step in and perform the services within that facility. So that goes to the larger question of the ecosystem necessary to support those manufacturing facilities. These have been built up over 20 to 30 years. Taiwan didn't just start, developing chips. They made a significant investment in the infrastructure and the ecosystem necessary to support that chip manufacturing facility and their capabilities. we need to also evaluate what our capabilities are, not just for the prime manufacturer, but the support systems necessary and the talent necessary to ensure that we have the right, not only focus on what's important for us, but we have the right raw materials as well as the right talent capable of addressing the needs that we have. This one, I think, is going to be broken out into terms of, what does global trade dynamics and geopolitical policies in the future? As you see, it rose 8, points or 8 positions from our last study. That's huge considering the issues that we're dealing with here. So again, I think this is one of those areas that we're going to want to dig into a little bit more. But I also think that it is a reference to our political environment that we just came out of, with a lot of the talk about tariffs and a lot of talk about nearshoring. So this has been I think one of the surprises for us, and that it rose that high. But I think when we start to dig into it a little bit more, I think we're going to see plots or subjects underneath this that make up that huge category of global trade and geopolitical. Big data and analytics, not surprising. When we're talking about artificial intelligence and we're talking about digital transformation, the use of data to ensure that we're able to respond to our demand signals and ensure that we are doing so in an efficient and an effective manner. This goes back to just in time. I mean, it's using data effectively to address your members or your consumers or your patients' needs. When you take a look at it, it dropped down from number 1, but I would say that artificial intelligence is probably a replacement of the big data and analytics. I think there's probably a significant overlap between those two. The next one's kind of curious, because this is a conversation that we had a little bit earlier, and I think Olivia was talking about the role responsibility of supply chain professionals, and you take a look at where cybersecurity is now moved up to number 4. This is a significant challenge. As we're investing in digital transformation and ensuring that our extended supply chain has access to technology across the systems, what we're finding is that our tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 vendors, number 1, don't have the resources to invest in the technology that the prime does. They don't have the talent necessary. We don't have enough employees that have that capabilities. And then further, their investment is waning compared to the prime. They don't see the risk associated with it. Unfortunately, the majority of the ransomware, malware, and phishing attacks are occurring at the extended supply chain through our partners, not directly through the prime. And so what we're finding is that now the relationship between the chief supply chain officer, the chief compliance officer, and the chief financial officer, those 3 are lockstep together in terms of addressing the cybersecurity. We're seeing significant challenges in terms of counterfeit or tampered products, trade embargo and sanctions. We're seeing strategic stockpiling and hoarding of products. We're seeing countries pull back on availability of critical materials or critical minerals for other manufacturing. This is a significant issue that, as we indicated, as I spoke about before, really wasn't part of the supply chain professional's primary role and responsibility. It is now, and especially in working across the enterprise with your chief compliance officer, your chief legal officer, as well as your chief financial officer. This is a significant issue that organizations are going to continue to have, not only vigilance, but this will continue to rise in importance as nefarious actors are finding ways to disrupt our supply chains.
Hey, Abe, where I work at Excellus, we had some suppliers, MKS, etc. Of course, cybersecurity hacked them, and we had a tough time getting supplies out of them for a while.
Yep.
Our competitor down the street, Applied, was supposedly hacked, at least according to their press releases. So it really screwed up the supply chains for a bit. Luckily we had some inventory stored on hand because of COVID. We had thought ahead a little bit, so we were in good shape. But yeah, you're 100% right. It's really affecting everybody.
Yeah, and again, you can't ignore it because of the digital transformation. Again, we're seeing significant benefits from the digital transformation, but significant exposure to risk because of the digital transformation that organizations are applying. And so again, this is an area that will probably see significant more emphasis placed on not only in our content, but within organizations as well. I jumped down to number 9 because this one, again, as I indicated before, always it concerns me that if I ask, this group or any individual that represents an organization what their number one asset is, I would say 99% of the people would tell me their employees. Their people are their number one asset. Well, if we do asset rationalization, what do you invest in? Your worst performing asset or your best performing asset? It's obviously the best performing asset, your most critical asset. And this is where we see a little bit of a disconnect, where if companies indicate that this is their number one asset and their number one priority, are you investing in it as such? And we're not seeing consistency in terms of the investment relative to the digital transformation and investment that they're making. Again, this is the core of what we do as an organization. It's critical for us to ensure that we have qualified, capable individuals that understand the data and understand the technology. A study was done a number of years ago on employers and what the capabilities of individuals coming out of schools, what their capabilities are, and what employers are looking for. Where were we overweighted and where were we underweighted? It was interesting. We were overweighted in technology and data analytics. That means the systems that we're using were much more powerful than we were using them for, and the data and the analytics were key to understanding, and predictive analytics. Where were we underweighted? In critical thinking and real world experience. Okay, now put those data points together. You got a technology that's much more powerful than you're using, and you've got individuals that can't critically evaluate the data coming in or out of the system. That is a very dangerous combination for organizations, especially when we're talking, I think Olivia talked about the talent side of people coming into the marketplace right now, digital natives. These individuals grew up with technology at their fingertips at all points. The leadership within supply chain right now, not so much. Myself, I did not grow up in a technology environment, and yet I grew up in a finance environment, but yet I'm considered a supply chain professional. This is part of the disconnect that we have, opportunity for mentoring as well as reverse mentoring for individuals coming into the marketplace. And so, more importantly than to us, what's critical here? Can talent keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing right now? And this is the investment that organizations need to make so that they can adjust to the new normal, if there is such a thing, but more importantly than not, to the transformation that's occurring almost every day. Organizational strategies are changing, and you need individuals that are responsive and resilient to what their processes are. And I think this is where supply chain professionals can lead. As industry professionals, we have always advocated for leadership within supply chain, the C-suite. Get them at the table, have these individuals represent supply chain. It wasn't that long ago that we did not have a seat at the table, that supply chain professionals were not at the C-suite. Now we are, and we now need to use our voice. So we advocated for years for a seat at the table. Now we need to use our voice at that table to advocate for supply chain professionals and the skills necessary to enable organizations to not only be resilient, to be agile to the changes that they're making in the marketplace. We as an organization have recognized this. We want to ensure that organizations also recognize the value of their talent. And you'll see the, the various, ways that organizations can focus on that. But more importantly, in our content, we've also recognized that we needed to change the way that we talk to organizations about their supply chains. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the, the SCORE model, the old linear model, plan, source, make, deliver. Historically, that enabled us to be able to explain supply chain to the general public. This, to us, is what more of a dynamic environment looks like for supply chains today. So you'll see all the key indicators in our SCORE metrics. Added to that was now regulatory and compliance, ESG, the environmental, social, and governance, as well as circular supply chains. Recognizing that now part of the role and responsibility, as I indicated before, our compliance is risk management, our social and environmental issue is sustainability. Historically, 10, 20 years ago, these were not key parts of organizations, supply chains, supply chain professionals' knowledge base. Now you need to ensure that you're able to orchestrate all the responsibilities. And that's why this new chart on the SCORE digital standard is much more dynamic. It's an infinite loop. It never stops. And so you'll see demand on one side and supply on the other side, and the ability to balance your supply and demand with all the activities underneath there. This now reflects what we believe is more of the supply chain design and implementation for organizations. Obviously, SCORE is, the foundation for more organization supply chain than any other model right now. It is important for us to continue to evolve that supply chain model to ensure that we are responsive to the way that organizations view their supply chains. And so, as I indicated before, measuring sustainability now is a key part of our SCORE model. Economic, environmental, and social. And you see the various aspects and the various data indicators that we have now within the SCORE model that can help organizations not only assess where they are today, but where they need to be compared not only to internal benchmarks, but external benchmarks as well. And I think that's a good segue to our, our last slide here. And that is, what do we do for companies? As you'll see here, our focus is on ensuring networking and engagement. Your workshops and this PDM is a great example of engaging employees and engaging supply chain professionals. Supply chain transformation is at the key. One of the ways that we want to ensure that organizations, specifically chapters and our leaders, have the ability to discern what needs to be done is through our assessments. There are a number of assessments that we have: a talent assessment, we've got a sustainability assessment, we've got a readiness assessment for SCORE. These are ways for organizations and for you, your chapters, to work with companies to identify the gaps they have in their system and then be able to recommend solutions for them as an organization, and to engage in the organizations beyond the transactions that we've historically done with the train test model. Let's just get them in, train them, test them, and then move on. Now we're seeing a much more strategic relationships with our partners and with organizations, and helping them transform and respond to the challenges that the market is, imposing upon them. This is a dynamic field. I couldn't be more excited about the opportunities the supply chain has, but we need to ensure that we've got the right talent available and at the right, levels to address not only the challenges that we're facing yesterday and the days before, but the challenges that we don't even know that are coming down the future here. I wanted to share one other thing with you, and that is a documentary series that we have produced with a production company out of the UK called WAG Entertainment, same production company that does the How It's Made. I'm sure most of you have seen that. We have 6 episodes. They were completed in November. If you were at our conference, in our last conference, we did share one of the episodes. That was the transport episodes. There are 6 episodes. What I want to share with you is the trailer for the documentary series. Our focus is on the consumer and the general public, in trying to have them understand the complexity of supply chain, and that the role that consumers and patients play in our supply chain, that they are not disconnected, that they are the beginning, they are demand signals that drives everything that we do. But yet there's very little understanding of the complexity of supply chain. So we endeavored to develop a documentary series. We have 6 parts. Each one is about 50 minutes. It identifies 4 products within each one of the categories, and we trace it all the way from origin to recycle, reuse, and waste. So without further ado, let me share with you what we hope to publish within the next, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 months. We're talking to Netflix, Nat Geo, Discovery, History, and I think Discovery channels in terms of the documentary series. So without further ado, let me share it.
Abe, is there supposed to be sound?
It's just the music right now.
Okay, because we can't hear anything.
You can't hear the music?
No. I thought there was sound to it.
There's certain settings you have to do or something. I don't know. But Abe, you're gonna have to narrate along the way. He's gonna be Kurt Gowdy.
Events picks out one specific event, and then we taste 4 products from that event. In this particular case, it's e-racing. These are electric vehicles. So we go with EV batteries, we go with tires, we go with feet.
We are introducing new technologies in this tire.
Oh, I can kind of hear it. Raise your volume, Abe.
Yeah, barely.
And sustainable recycled materials.
At the end of 2 years, we will cut it up into individual sections, roll that up and remove it.
Good job. I can hear it.
So this thing right here is called the Big Glory Bay King Salmon. That was in New Zealand, not more than 24 hours ago. Today it's on ice here in Dallas, Texas.
50% of all the fruit and veg in Europe is coming from Almeria. Plastic is critical to that success.
The process of producing steel actually makes up 8% of the world's emissions every year.
For the chain to improve its impact on the environment, it has to change.
There's a ton of innovation happening to help to make this transition.
AI has the potential to be utterly transformative to the way the chain works.
One of the challenges and opportunities is figuring out a way to efficiently reuse fuel cells, batteries at the end of their life, so that we don't have to keep extracting virgin materials to keep making more fuel cells.
Consumers don't know how many hands it has touched, how far it has traveled.
We expect full shelves of a wide range of products.
The supply chain is really the story of where everything comes from. It's the trip from the mine, the farm, the forests, the ocean, all the way through every factory and every truck, your house, your refrigerator.
Any audio?
No, he's showing us.
Okay.
There we are, that's it.
Oh, that's
Thank-
awesome.
Thank you, Abe, so much for your talk tonight, as well as sharing that video. And I think all of us can get excited to learn more about the processes and procedures that go into a lot of what we use every single day.
Yeah, it was really good stuff that we can all take back to our workplace and discuss with our managers is great. So we really want to thank you from all the chapters. Also, the Massachusetts chapter is going to send you a gift card for your, as a token, you know, for your participation tonight. It'll come from Sandeep, so it's not spam. It's real. It's Sandeep, Amazon, but it's real. So you'll get that. And I think I have your email. I'm not sure. Olivia, can you just send me his email so we can get that over to Sandeep and have him send the gift card?
Yes.
I appreciate it. And also, can you email me or Olivia the PPT so we can post that along with the recording? Okay.
Abe,
Abe,
you
I
gotta
think
turn on, you muted.
your volume is no longer here.
I think you're still on the volume for the presentation part, the PPT.
Nope. Oh no, we've lost Abe.
No, he's
Man
melting.
down.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing I said was, do me a favor, send it to one of your students, the gift card. I think they could use it much more than I can. Olivia, I think Colleen sent you the deck already.
Yes, she
It's
did.
okay.
I'm pretty sure she sent it to me already. If not, I could get it from Colleen. And I could also get that video you shared.
Yeah,
to
the
promote.
trailer is not included in there because of the size of the trailer. We can send you the link to the trailer so you can have it separately.
Even better. Olivia, send me the PPT and the link and we'll get both posted. So, so everyone, I put the link to the recording in chat. Copy it before you leave the meeting so you have the link. And it's going to be the end of the week because it's done by volunteers, but we'll have the recording posted. We'll have the PowerPoint that Abe is sending us, and we'll also post, thirdly, the link to the video that he just sent us. Also in the chat window is the link to the survey as well as the link to the CEU certificate. So grab those now before you forget. And of course, all the other links as you need them for our classes at Olivia's area or our area. as well as you know, the NESCON New England Supply Chain, which is now really worldwide. It's not just New England anymore. It's virtual, it's free. So get the links now while you're here, and we're gonna stay on and networking for anyone who wants to stay for a few minutes. So,
or if you have any questions for Abe, I know Abe volunteered to answer any questions. So if you have a question for Abe, he will be on for a few minutes to answer those as well. I already see a hand raised, so I will kind of navigate this. So Chaz, you had a question, so you could go first.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Just a question on we didn't see what trends might have dropped out, but I'm really surprised that global warming or natural disasters is not on there. I mean, we're dealing with the fires in California. I happen to work in aerospace, so I do like your reference to washers on jet engines because we do deal with that. But a lot of aerospace companies in Southern California right now in the precipice of burning up literally, and we had the floods in North Carolina. I'm just really surprised that has not made the list.
So am I, Chaz. One of the areas a couple of areas that I was particularly, I don't want to say disappointed, but not seeing it rise up to that level versus, to your point, the sustainability, especially climate change and environmental impact from the supply chains. And the other is DE&I. And we are, and again, irrespective of your position, the fact that it's not even on there anymore, that sustainability and environmental concerns are no longer there. I think this is temporary. I think over the past maybe year and a half, with a lot of the disruptions, and more importantly, a lot of the proof points that organizations are being held accountable for when they make their statements about their sustainability. Companies are getting tagged. Delta, a good example, they're getting tagged because of their statement that they are carbon neutral. The way they became carbon neutral is they bought more carbon credits.
Yeah.
They're complying with, the letter of the law. Is it within the spirit? Again, I'll leave that to somebody else. But right now, I'm a little bit frustrated in terms of how these dropped off totally off the list, specifically sustainability, environmental, as well as DE&I.
Yeah, I remember them being on a list in the past, so that's why I brought it up. All right, thank you.
I'm not going to hold Deanna's feet to the fire on this because I'm sure they had plenty of conversations about what's in and out of these. But to your point, Chaz, that is, from my perspective, I think it is a mess.
That is true. There's always a good, healthy debate amongst the volunteers, and it really depends on who the group of volunteers are that year. And then also there's the top 10 trends, but then there's the others that are the 11th, 12th, 13th that are sitting just below the top 10, and they may surface up again. And I think sustainability is in there. So I was just trying to go see if I can find what those are. But please reach out and join one of the teams and help contribute to the trends.
I know you guys worked very hard to gather that list this year, and there's lots of data. And to the point, there's always something. But to both yours and Abe's point, as information starts to come in for 2025, when we get to this year's conference, and you guys present to the directors, Abe and the other board members, there's probably going to be a big disruption based on some of these natural disasters we're having.
And they have a process that they follow to try and keep it consistent over the years. And the idea is between 3 to 5 year trends. So there's things that are happening now, or there may be trends that have been on there repetitively and they've slowly moved up the list because now they're not 3 to 5 years out, they are happening now. And then it depends what industry, what part of the world you're in. So it's the best that our volunteers can offer at that moment.
If I may interject though, but Abe, I mean, it's no surprise that the geopolitics rose by what, 8 from 2024, and that I believe is really the primary, like the trend that is affecting pretty much all the other areas or the other in the top 10. AI, of course, is always in the foremost, mind of people, but that geopolitical, I think, has impact on each and every one of those in the top 10 and even in below that. And my question, Abe, is like, does ASCM have a lobbyist group? I know that the companies I've worked for have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. How are we positioning ourselves as a voice, especially in supply chain, in the government? I mean, just like, as you can see, the inflation alone, how that has been blamed on government when the government doesn't really have any effect on inflation, and it's about the residual effect of the pandemic, and nobody understands that the pent-up demand and supply not catching up. I mean, how are we educating the government who is basically affecting us, the business? And I think we should have a voice out there, like a lobby group. Anyway, sorry, I'm just frustrated.
It's an interesting point. The association that the structure of our organization being a professional membership organization is called a 501c6 organization. That's a professional membership organization. We are prohibited from lobbying. Okay, C3 organizations can lobby. Okay, so again, depending on the type of organization that you have, you can lobby. The challenge that we have with lobbying, and we made a conscious decision not to lobby because we represent supply chain across the globe, not supply chain within a particular region. And so advocating for a particular region, whether it be the EU on their sustainability standards, would come in conflict with the United States and our sustainability standards. So you need to be responsive to where the organizations are operating. And especially we work with a lot of multinationals. I'll be advocating for one of their plants and advocating against one of their plants if you're doing lobbying. And so it puts us in a more of an agnostic position and allow the various governments to establish their own without our influence. The Manufacturing Institute is a lobbying organization. And there are a whole host of industry associations that lobby for particular industries, whether it be steel or you name it. Every industry has an association. But we are also part of the White House Task Force on Resiliency. A couple of our board members are on the White House Task Force on Sustainability. I wish I could tell you that they're making significant progress and that they're developing the appropriate, proclamations. Everything is on hold right now. Everything is on.
That's typical.
Yeah, don't talk to us until after January 20th right now.
Yeah.
So we were invited, literally, I was invited, we work with the White House Task Force, and there was an invitation for a call. They said, okay, no more calls. We're going to hold off until after January 20th before we establish any committees or any task forces. But I will also say that, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that the government has done is for media, not necessarily for the industries. Let's go back to all the container ships off the port of Long Beach in LA back in 20 and 21. That was horrible. Oh my God, we had all these ships. We got to open up the ports 24/7, 365. We had no warehouse space. We had no truck drivers. We had no retail space. But we don't have any more ships off, hanging out, waiting to, drop off their loads anymore. Or kick the can down the road. We didn't solve the problem. And again, but the media, we don't have ships on the, hanging out, waiting to get into the harbor anymore. Again, most of the work that the governments do, we don't see. The stuff that's done is more often for the general public's consumption, as opposed to the impact that it's having on industries.
Yeah, an issue on AI. Where I work, I'm watching all the software engineers using AI like nobody's business, and I can't help to think somebody's going to tap them on the shoulder. Hey, we don't need you anymore. We got AI. I mean, the people have to see AI for what it is. It's a job reducer. I guess I look at it in the past, 40 years when the computers started to become our way of life. there were certain tasks and jobs that went away. Like there was all these engineers that spent time making all the drawings. Well, we don't need those people anymore. We don't need all the administrators and stuff, sub administrators. Everybody's like their own person on their own computer. And can we build to this? Can we build to this? Yes, we built some. But the reality is, and I once talked with this guy who did a lot of work with a company in China, is that they're always, Chinese people are looking ahead 20, 30 years. Where are we going to be? America is where I'm going to get that next dime off of what we can make on the stock market. I like to think there's some innovation thinking ahead. Nobody's thinking ahead. This AI is a tool that people, don't get me wrong, I see AI as it's amazing, but the reality is going to eliminate jobs like nobody's business. Are we trying to gear AI to keep jobs in place? Otherwise, in the old concept of things, if you make things so good and everything is made with such least amount of money and everything else, and other businesses rolling strong, and then there's nobody there working anymore to buy what you're selling. And then what happens? We go into depression, which I foresee in a not too distant future with this current administration. With the next administration. All right, that's it up.
I got a little, again, I understand. And I think there's a lot of trepidation about AI. Originally, when we had technology or innovation within the warehouse or manufacturing, it was the pick, pack, and lift. So we were moving away from the labor aspect of it. AI is on the knowledge side. It's not on the labor side. And I think that's why it's creating a tremendous amount of sort of anxiety about who's it going to replace. Well, 4 years ago, code writers, you could write your own ticket and you could have a job no matter what, as long as you wrote code. Now, you don't need code writers anymore.
I'm watching that go away, man.
You take a look at the kids coming out of school right now. They're not going into code writing anymore because AI has now sort of leapfrogged that. Relative to the impact that it has on supply chain. Again, we're early adopters. Supply chain industry does not wait to see what the impact is. They do it measured in terms of what the impact is going to be. AI is going to have the ability to gather large amounts of data, and just the volumes of it is beyond our capability as an individual to manage or understand that. But I'm going to go back to the critical thinking, the knowledge and the experience that supply chain professionals have. You can't get it through AI. You can't get experience. You can't get knowledge through AI. You can't get critical thinking through AI. It's based on historical data. It's not creating, it's not creating new medicine. It's, it's diagnosing. It's much better at that than it is create a, an energy source that is, abundant. That's not what AI is going to do.
And oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Olivia.
I was going to say, I will jump in as someone who uses AI to help run some of the day-to-day operations as a solo business owner. I use it as a tool. And so when I consult with clients, when it comes to top globally ranked podcasts and we're talking about strategy, AI does not get touched. If you're using AI to create your strategy, a podcast strategy is like building a business foundation and building your business strategy. You should not be touching AI. When I talk to them about creating a title and description, or I'm creating titles and descriptions, I will pull a transcript of an audio, and instead of listening to an hour's worth of content, I plug that into AI and I ask AI specific questions based on the topic to get me the main bullet points. Now I've spent 3 minutes getting out the information that would have taken me an hour before. But a big thing with AI is understanding how to use AI. When I talk to some entrepreneurs and they go, well, I could just plug something in, and I say, okay, plug in what you think, and I plug in the more detailed we'd get two completely different answers. And if they use the wrong data, to Abe's point, because it is historical data that it's really pulling, because it didn't ask the right questions.
I'm going to
And
pound
that's
on
where
it,
we
Olivia.
have-
That statement that you just made there is so critical, and more often than not, it's over. We tend to, just gloss over it. Asking the right question. How do you ask AI the right question? To your point, if you don't, you're going to get a very different response. And I think this is where critical thinking, experience, and knowledge of individuals can play a significant part within AI, and that's teaching individuals how to use AI and where to use AI. I think more often than not, it's that, the great unknown. Oh my God, it's going to take over everybody's business and it's going to replace knowledge workers. You still need the knowledge worker. That's the individual that, number one, builds.
You don't need as many. That's the
right.
point. Yep. There's a team of people that where I work that have, when they want to solve this problem, or there's an anticipation of a software code that they need fixing, and they'll set 5 people that play, 5 people all using AI and all asking different questions, and then they rate and grade each one of those answers, and then they have an AI guy rate the rate. So it's like and then they finally determine this is the one we're going to do, and then did anybody do anything? That's what I'm talking about.
Think about it.
I'm worried.
Olivia is providing some really great examples on the use of AI and when to use AI.
And I think what we also have to take perspective on, because a lot of it, and I'm not trying to take this away from Abe, so I definitely want his input on this, is rules, procedures, right? So if you look at it from a bigger picture, AI isn't replacing someone's job. They're changing the job function.
I think what you're facing right now with a lot of AI and a lot of the angst over AI is the learning process. It's that change. And as a society, we've done this several times. This is just another evolution.
I couldn't agree with you more.
But I'm going to throw something at you.
Like the internet.
Every time we race ahead with technology, or if we allow businesses to do what they want, everything goes to a running pace. It's of competition, and what eventually happens, there's going to be a case where it's going to, like, for example, the Roaring 20s, post Civil War. What happened to that? We went into depression both times after that. I can't foresee it. Every instance where inflation rose, how do we solve the problem? We did more spending. Late 1990s, another example going into recession was, thank God for 9/11, other we'd still be in the depression. It's the fact is, we cannot allow, we need, like you say, rules and regulations. But the only ones that could do that is the government. And when they remove all the regulations, guess what, baby? It's like, let's go wild. That's my problem. And I'm worried. And I think, well, just retire. Oh, yeah. So what? They'll get rid of Social Security, my pension be down the drain, and what? I got to go out and work at McDonald's.
Hopefully, more of these professional organizations. I'm part of the Project Management Institute as well as ASCM. They are trying to bring together professionals like us and talk about these things that we may not know. Somebody else knows a little bit more. One of the sessions at the Austin conference was about prompt engineering. Albrecht Ricken, he had walked through the steps of how to build the right questions and adding more nuances to that question to get the best out of the AI. And I think that just as supply chain professionals, you're used to chaos and trying to figure it out, using tools and collaborating across different teammates, different functions, working with IT, commercial, marketing, and then outside of the walls, collaborating with your suppliers and customers. So we're equipped to handle that change. I think that if you're not too sure what's, reach out to some of the folks on this call or across all the ASCM chapters and members.
Does
Does
anyone else
any-
have any questions? Because we want to hit up Abe while we still have him, by the way. Sorry, Larry. We have to give somebody else a shot.
I have
Yes,
one
I
for
just saw a
Abe.
hand.
Go ahead.
George?
No,
Yes. Abe, good to see you again. Well done. Excellent presentation. One thing that bothered me was seeing risk management as a category drop to the so low in your top 10 list. Then I realized it's an element of 5 of the 9 that were listed above it. So there's some interplay between those 10 that we need to keep sight of. And that even though something may have dropped down to 12 or 13 that used to be on the list, it's still in there somewhere in that mix.
Yeah, it's funny how risk management and cybersecurity are not part and parcel of the same. And this goes to Deanna's point. The amount of data that the team was looking at, I mean, it is voluminous. And that's where, AI has helped us in terms of paring down that information. The definitions are key in this one, George. And if you take a look at the team did a great job in defining the term risk management versus cybersecurity. So you'll see the nuances between those and why they're separate as opposed to combined. Yeah.
And some of those definitions have changed over the years, and it's always to try and make it better, of course. So I think the last thing we had talked about as a group is, how maybe producing something that shows the changes over the years to see how
the trends. That'd be interesting. It's a good point, Dan. I'm gonna note that. I'm gonna give it to you.
Well, the committee talked about it with Armand, so I think we didn't have a chance to get it all the way through, but it's something we've discussed.
Got enough years now. It'd be interesting to take a look at. That's a really good point.
Yeah, we can keep taking questions. I'm just gonna stop the recording so the shy people will ask next time. But I do want to say thanks to Abe before I stop the recording. Okay, stopping.